Today I'll be taking a look at the Dungeons & Dragons Starter Set box that's coming out from Wizards of the Coast. Obviously the D&D Starter Set is going to be one of the big releases this summer as far as gaming, especially role-playing games, because it's the introduction of the 5th edition of the Dungeons & Dragons rules. So I know a lot of people are really looking forward to picking this up, or at least checking it out to see what changes Wizards of the Coast has made. So let's take a look to see what we've got inside. Let's take a look to see what we've got inside the D&D Starter Set from Wizards of the Coast. It's for ages 12 and up, and obviously enough, as the box says, everything you need to start playing the world's greatest role-playing game. Of course, that's rather subjective. The Starter Set box is going to be available on July 15th, 2014, and it carries an MSRP of $19.99, but a little bit later on I'll tell you how you can get it for a whole lot less than that. Taking a look at the back of the box, it's going to tell us that we're going to find inside a 64-page adventure book with everything the DM needs to get the game started, a 32-page rule book for the player characters, 5 pre-gen character sheets, and 6 game dice. So the box is fairly light, but let's open it up and take a look to see what's inside. As we can see, we've got a bag of dice, and it contains all these standard RPG gaming dice that you would need. The 6-sider, 4-sider, 10-sider, 8-sider, 12-sider, and a 20-sider. I have to admit, I find it unusual that a lot of times when you pick up something and it's got the gaming dice in it, they always give you one 6-sided die, knowing that you're always going to utilize 2 or 3 6-siders. I don't know why they just don't include that with it. Plus, I'm going to take a guess, maybe we're not seeing too many percentile die rolls anymore because there's only the one 10-sider. So we've got the Starter Set rule book, and it's printed on, I'd say, magazine weight paper here. The Lost Mind of Phandelver. This must be the Dungeon Master Guide along with an adventure. We'll find out in a sec though. Put that to the side. Character sheets. And it looks like this is already pre-generated here. No character name though. A little bit of a background here. Just looking through. Okay, so we've got those character sheets. And what did you do last night? Well, actually, it's none of your business, but I guess you could go and play D&D encounters at many of your friendly local gaming stores or even friendly local comic shops. So it looks like that's pretty much the extent of what we've got here in the box. Let's take a little closer look here at the Starter Set rule book, just to kind of get a better feel. Of course, the first chapter is talking about how to play, getting started, the game dice, the structure of play, the 6 abilities, advantages and disadvantages, ability checks, going through the saving throws, combat, movement and position, actions in combat. A little surprised not as artwork heavy as many Dungeons & Dragons products we see. Talking about travel, equipment. Of course, we're seeing some gear, some different charts here. Spell casting. talking about what is a spell, spell levels. It's going to go through the spell list. Now, as far as the starter box here, supposedly you've got everything in the box to take your characters from the first level up to the 5th level. So you should have enough for a few months of play, depending on how often your play sessions take place, obviously. So it's just talking about all the different spells. And then in appendix it shows different conditions. So there's our starter set rulebook. That's for the players. And then we have the Lost Mine of Phandelver. It's going to talk about the adventure itself, an overview. I believe, I'm going to take a guess at the adventure itself is going to include various areas for the DM as far as the rules and such, and how to incorporate the rules of the game. So, looking through here, it pretty much is taking us on a walk through the adventure. Looks like there's goblins involved. No spoilers, I'm just taking a peek through. So far 14 pages in, it's all the adventure. So it looks like it's a pretty good long adventure, and I believe it's setting up for the Tyranny of Dragons storyline that's going to launch in August. So 28 pages in, we're still in the adventure. Kind of interesting. I'm not seeing any specific Dungeon Master sections here. It's almost as if this is kind of a mini campaign. Yeah, it's very possible that this is just going to be the adventure itself. You'll notice too that for beginning Dungeon Masters, there's a little flavor text for them to set the scene. There we go, a beholder, I think. It's been a while since I played D&D, sorry folks. Looks like this is all the adventure. Then we have an appendix with some of the magic items that the characters will find in the adventure. An appendix of the different monsters. Here's a bit of a monster manual showing us the creatures themselves. Okay, so 64 pages for The Lost Mine of Phandelver. So we've got that, and the rulebook, the character sheets, and the dice. And that's what you're going to find inside the D&D Starter Set. There's a lot to like inside the Dungeons & Dragons Starter Set box. And there's a few things that might not be so appealing. First off, I do want to mention that the MSRP is $19.99. But currently, I did notice that over on Amazon.com, you can order the Starter Set box for $12.65. So that's a phenomenal savings. Hell, $12.65? You can't even get really an adventure for that price any longer. So by all means, if you want to save a little bit of money because you're not completely sold on checking out the new D&D, that might be an avenue for you to pursue. Personally, I always recommend supporting your local friendly game store, but times are tough sometimes if you want to save a few extra bucks. Anyway, as far as the starter set itself, I like quite a few things about it. The last time D&D released a new edition, the 4th edition, they came out with the red box, which was kind of their starter box. and it was pretty disappointing for most people. Number one, there are a lot of role players out there who didn't care for 4th edition overall. Myself, never really followed it that much anyway, so I didn't have a dog in the fight. But a big criticism of it was not so much role-playing, it was more like playing a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, that the characters were too defined as far as their classes. You didn't have a lot of wiggle room, and it was just a little overwhelming for some people because I guess the combat really took center stage over everything else, including role-playing and storytelling. I can tell here that there is a big movement away from that. The focus is more on role-playing, more on storytelling, and that's a really good thing. As far as the box itself and what you get inside, for 20 bucks, you're still getting a pretty good deal. As far as the player's guide, there's a lot of rules in there. It's not like the 4th edition red box where it was kind of a choose-your-own-adventure, and you really didn't get much use out of that. And honestly, I don't believe it was a very good adventure in the first place. So you do get some core rules. You do get a feel for how the game is going to play. The adventure itself, the kind of Dungeon Master's Guide, which really isn't a Dungeon Master's Guide, it's really more just the adventure itself with some tips on how to run it, is pretty cool. You're going to get a lot of play out of it. I can easily see the player characters going from level 1 through level 5 just with what's going on and all the little side quests and little story and adventure nuggets as well. So pretty good value there. You're going to get a lot of use out of it. A couple of things that I'm not overly keen on is the paper stock that it's printed on. Little cheesy. They're not going to hold up to a lot of wear and tear. So you're going to want to be careful with this as far as paging through it. I can easily see these books getting tattered pretty quickly, pretty easily. Also, for folks who already have picked up the starter box for Pathfinder, I'm sure a lot of them are wondering, hey, what's the difference between the two? Of course, the Pathfinder box is going to have much more inside. It does have a higher MSRP, $39.99 if I recall correctly. So the starter set for D&D is half that price, and of course, if you can save online, you're going to get it for even less than half the price of the Pathfinder. But the Pathfinder box does include tokens, maps, so on and so forth. This does not. You'll notice there's no maps, there's no tokens, there's no little standees, or whatever they like to call those little tokens that you can use for the monsters instead of miniatures. So keep that in mind as well. All in all, I honestly really like what's going on in the starter set, especially at the price point that it's at for a little less than 20 bucks. You're going to find that there's a lot of useful info in here. There's enough monsters that you can start creating your own little adventures and so on and so forth. Character creation's pretty weak because, of course, it's just kind of getting you into the game with the pre-generated characters and so on and so forth. But you're not going to have to wait too long for the other releases to be coming out, because if memory serves correctly, I believe it's either the Player's Guide or the Dungeon Master's Guide that's going to release at Gen Con in August, along with the first in the line of Tyranny of Dragons storyline, which is looking like that's shaping up to be pretty cool too. So if you're into role-playing games, you're really curious what's going on with Dungeons & Dragons, I think D&D is coming back to the fold. More focus on the role-playing, more focus on the storytelling, more focus on the fun as opposed to just rolling dice and just sitting there and having a battle take an hour and a half for you to game out, to roll out, basically. So like I said, I like what's going on with the starter set. I thoroughly recommend anyone who's interested in seeing what changes are going on with the D&D system, pick it up. It's a good value, not a great value, mainly because of cardstock and the lack of maps and so on and so forth. But for 20 bucks or $12.65, you really can't go wrong. So overall, I'm giving the D&D Starter Set a very, very solid, on the verge of a must-buy. Yes, I'll say it's a must-buy, especially for role players out there. I give it a 9.0 out of 10. Once again, this is Jeff McAleer. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to swing over to thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more.